Hi, I'm Miles, and this is Auto-Minded. Now, if you know the story of the Tucker 48, then you know most of its heartache comes from finances, litigation, and eventual seizures. So I'm going to tell you that story all over again, but it's not up north. It's here in Shreveport, Louisiana, and actually happened about half a century later. So it started in 1994. Barry Gilliam is spearheading the expansion of the Canadian Football League, and well, his Shreveport Pirates are one of the most southernmost teams in all of the CFL. Shreveport was really excited to have a professional football team, and the goodwill was going around everywhere. The Independence Bowl Stadium got new seating, and Gilliam even spent six figures putting a whole new scoreboard up just for the Shreveport Pirates. The goodwill even extended right back to that high-traffic building back there, which in 1994 was the Ark-La-Tex Automobile Museum.
Actually, we had heard that there was a football team coming to Shreveport, Louisiana, and that the owner had a huge car collection. So I called him on the phone. I was able to get in touch with him, and he said, "Well, I have a Tucker. Would you like to display it?" I said, "Well, yeah, I'd love to display it." And so anyway, he actually had the Tucker trucked down here. It was unloaded, white gloves and everything. I mean, nobody touched it without gloves. We loaded it on a ramp in the museum, and it brought so many people in because people were just there to see the Tucker.
Well, good times, they don't always last forever, and in the case of the Shreveport Pirates, it was after their second season in 1995 because, well, started to realize something. Canadian football plays their season in the summertime, and that really works well up in Canada. But down in Shreveport, where it's hot, muggy, and miserable, you don't want to be in an outdoor stadium. That got Glieberman thinking about moving the team. The problem was he hadn't finished paying for that fancy new scoreboard yet. And the company that put it in, well, they were going to get kind of scared because you were going to have this big stadium, big scoreboard, no team to play. So they asked the courts to make sure the Tucker stayed at the car museum until the bill was paid. The funny thing is that the Shreveport Times did this article on November 30th, 1995. It was hours before the order was signed by the courts. It meant the car belonged to Glieberman, but not for much longer. And that set in motion a particularly interesting series of events.
We kept the Tucker for quite some time until I get a call one day from Mr. Glieberman, who was the owner, saying that he wanted to move the Tucker and that he would send somebody to pick it up, but he said, "I need to know who is insured enough for the value of the Tucker if something should happen in transportation." So I called around and found one person in Shreveport that had enough insurance to take the Tucker. So anyway, they came and picked it up, which was no easy task because it was me and another lady at the museum at the time, and we were terrified that we were going to scratch it or do something, you know, that would be detrimental to the value of the Tucker. So anyway, the Tucker's out. It's loaded on a tow truck. Well, in the meantime, I get a call from the U.S. Marshals office saying, "We're coming to get the Tucker. There's a lawsuit pending, and we're going to take custody of it." So I was really caught in a bind because I had let it go, which I had a contract with the owner to only let it go to him, and yet I've got the U.S. Marshals on the phone saying we're going to confiscate the Tucker for an unpaid bill. I had relationships with the U.S. Marshal in that I held drug cars in the basement of the building until they were either auctioned off by the U.S. Marshal or the person who owned them got a release to get the car back, which didn't happen very often. So I actually knew both of the parties involved, the U.S. Marshals on one side and Mr. Glieberman on the other side, which really put me in a position of obeying the law to a certain extent and abiding by a contract that I had to take care of the Tucker. It's on a tow truck and it's going down a major thoroughfare in Shreveport, and a lady's driving on Clyde Fant and she sees it, and it's over on the side of the road, and the reason it's over on the side of the road is because the tow truck ran out of gas. And she calls a local radio station and says somebody has stole the Tucker from the car museum. And so the radio station gets on there and says, the Tucker is loose. It's a Runaway Tucker.
It wasn't just the radio station that caught up to the flatbed in the car. It was also the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office. In fact, they found it somewhere around this road, and I know that because I have the police report right here. And in there it also says that it was Glieberman's lawyer who was riding in the truck when they ran out of gas. He was on his way to a remote, undisclosed location, and as you can see, we're quite remote from where we were at the museum. Turns out it's only about 10 miles, and, well, if you just think about how even quieter it was 30 years ago, they might not have been trying to get too much further. But they didn't get where they were going, and instead the sheriffs gave it over to the Marshals office, and the Marshals got it back to the museum. And in fact, the whole ordeal didn't really take all that long.
So anyway, in a few minutes, I see the Tucker coming back down the street, and I get a call from the Marshals again saying, would you mind to take the Tucker back and hold it for us until we can negotiate and resolve the issue that we have with the owner, who was Mr. Glieberman. So I said, well, sure, because I didn't want anything to happen to it. I mean, it was like a child. And so anyway, they again took the Tucker off of the tow truck, which was no easy feat because we were so worried about scratching it or doing something that would be detrimental to the value. Anyway, we got it back into the museum, got it on a ramp, which we had it on a ramp so it would turn and people could see it without going around it. And of course the U.S. Marshal slapped a big confiscated U.S. Marshal ticket on the windshield, which was interesting, I must admit. Anyway, finally there was a resolution to the dispute, and Mr. Glieberman came back, sent his people in white gloves to take the Tucker home. And even though it was a beautiful exhibit, I was so relieved that I didn't have the responsibility of that Tucker anymore. And it certainly served its purpose because it brought all these people in just to see it. So it was a coup. And it was called the Runaway Tucker.
Now, if you still want to dig a little bit deeper into the story, there still is one more mystery. You see, the police report doesn't have the exact address for where the stop was. And quite frankly, back then it didn't make much difference, and 30 years later, this file isn't very thick. The only thing that I do know is that the local TV station did also come out here, but well, to get them to digitize that footage and then just to even get short-term rights, it's a lot of money. Budget we don't have, and quite frankly, if you make this video popular, maybe they'll take it upon themselves to put it out there in the world. But there is a really good reason for also coming out here. And that's because we're at the other end of the road where they got the stop. And it's really, really kind of funny, maybe a little bit tragic, maybe a little bit poetic, but what you don't understand is that right behind those train tracks right there, well, basically, back in 1995, there was a big GM truck plant right there. And so if you think about it, even many decades later after the demise of the Tucker Corporation, and even here in Shreveport, well, we still had that problem where that Tucker's run ended in the shadow of one of the Detroit big boys. Thanks for watching.